Good morning, game changers. It's finally time for the training to start for the Super Sunday event where we will lead our youth through a discussion of my new book, Surrender or Explode, Learning to Play the Game of Life God's Way. I am so excited that you have made the commitment to take on this task of leading your youth through the study of, I believe, is a game-changing book for our youth at a critical time in their development. So let me start by clarifying something that I think I've been a little confusing about. First of all, the 4 C's are not a part of the 5-week study. The 4 C's are nuggets that I have created over the years that I've worked with youth that help me effectively teach them, work with them in a counseling setting or in a speaking setting, the things that I think they are needing to learn, wanting to learn. So the 4 C's, commitment, credibility, collaboration, and choice, are not a part of the 5 levels of the study. So let me separate those two out. However, the 4 C's increase your effectiveness as you work with the youth. And my goal is not to just spend 5 weeks in front of the youth talking. My goal for you and the youth is that the work that you do together will be effective and results producing. In my challenge that I did with the youth in my office, the results were mind-blowing. But I incorporate the 4 C's in the work that I do with youth constantly. There is never an opportunity that I work with youth that I'm not mindful of the 4 C's. But then the study itself has 5 levels, at 5 levels over 5 weeks. The 4 C's is primarily for the parents and the leaders to be mindful of as they work with the youth, but the 5 levels of the study walk through the levels in the book. So let me make that distinction. So when you work with the adults, whenever you have that session, it does not replace one of the 5 weekly level studies. That is a separate session with the adults that you would determine how, when, where you would do that. So I want to make that distinction. I want to make that clarification. And I apologize for the confusion that may have come out of the way I laid it out. So today we're going to talk about the 5 levels, the 5 weekly studies, and then I'm going to include in that discussion how the 4 C's affect the study as you walk through it, but they're separate. The 4 C's are for effective teaching, parenting, training. The 5 levels are directly correlated with the levels in the book, and the levels in the book are correlated with video games from beginner to leaderboard, just like we see when the young people play video games on a daily basis. So now that I've made that clarification, let's dive into week 1, level 1, entitled Don't Get It Twisted. And this level and this week is primarily geared to help the young people begin to look at how life really does compare to a video game, and understanding that just as when you play video games, there's certain skills that are required to be successful in life. There are skills that are required to be successful. So I want to lay the parallel out between video games and life so the youth have an analogy, the youth have a comparison to how this information generalizes to their lives. And part of that entails them understanding that their success or their failure is determined by them and how they play the game. And they can't blame anyone else and point a finger and say, woe is me, because they have to choose in life as well as in video games. What lessons will they learn? What lessons will they apply and live out? And how those lessons will allow them to advance in life, just like learning the lessons of the video games allow them to move from one level to the next level in the success of playing the video games. And the core of week one, don't get it twisted, is to understand two things. Who are you and who is God? And how do you see yourself? And how do you see God? Now, let me interject two components. One component is each level, each lesson has worksheets. I've created worksheets. This is not a sermon. This is not a lecture. This is an engaged dialogue. And the young people will actually do the work, and the adults will be the facilitators. But the success of your facilitation, adults, depends on your commitment to those results. And part of that is making sure that you're fully aware and informed of the content, all of the content of the book. Please do not try to lead this study without reading the book level by level before you teach the information. But to facilitate your instruction, I have created worksheets. And the worksheets will be available to you in a packet once you make the commitment to lead. You hit me up on my website, commit to being a leader. You will be emailed an entire packet of the worksheets that will facilitate the dialogue, the collaboration with the youth. So, excuse me. The first important element of effective teaching is being committed. So you don't want to try to do this, take shortcuts and kind of skim through this material. You must be fully grounded in the content of the book in order for you to deliver the content well. And the book is dense. That's one of the reasons that I said this is not a novel. This is not a casual read as you go book. This is a book to be studied. So the first commitment starts with the leaders and the parents both being willing to dive into this book to understand what's being taught to their youth, to your youth. So after they look at who they are, then the next question is, who is God? When I did this study, I called them pop quizzes. And I threw a pop quiz at the group the first session, and I asked them to tell me who they were. I had a mirror, actually, that I had them look into the mirror and see themselves through the mirror, kind of like the old nursery rhyme, mirror, mirror on the wall. And of course, oftentimes they told me how old they were and where they went to school and what their name was. But I wanted them to begin to recognize whoever I am who I am because I was created in the image of God. But if they don't know who God is, then that impedes their ability to know who they are. So on the worksheet, after we do the mirror exercise, then they're asked to look at some traits that describe God and list in some priority how important those traits are to them about God. And it's just a list that comes from traits that we learn in the Bible about who God is: loving, gracious, forgiving, merciful. And then I slide into the notion of how many of those traits that we define as godly do you exhibit as his image bearers? And then they have to look at, how do I represent who God is? And then I just want them to take a look and see, what do they see? What does that show them? What does that tell them? And the responses that you will get from the youth will be eye-opening. Because one of the youth in my group said, yeah, I do some of those things like God, but I don't do them consistently. Or I only do them in select audiences with select people. But that is not who I am continuously. And then as they walk into the understanding of who they are as image bearers of God, then we sort of wrap up this session with, and what might God's purpose and plans be for your life, considering who you are? And they really begin to reflect on, why am I here? Why would God have created me? What might the purposes and plans be for my life through God, from God? And so as we allow them to look within themselves, when we truly are credible, then we're able to disclose from an authentic place how we likewise struggled with who we were and what the plans God had for our lives looked like or didn't look like. And that allows our young people to feel safe. And that allows our young people to be vulnerable, to talk about topics that are not generally talked about while you're playing video games, but are critical topics to be talked about as they navigate life and seek to win and be successful playing it the way God would have them play it. So level 1 is pretty basic. It's the beginning level. We're not diving deep yet. We're just starting to open them up to begin to answer some questions about how do they navigate life. And one of those critical questions is, who are you? How do you see yourself? And do you truly believe that you were created in the image of God or not? And the discussion that can flow out of that will blow your mind as a facilitator leader. Now remember, I want to repeat this. My objective is to be thorough, not fast. And you may not cover all of the information in level 1 to the degree that you want to. That's fine. Follow the lead of your group. I would rather you be thorough than fast. And secondly, you're the facilitator. You're not giving them a lecture. You're not preaching a sermon. You are facilitating the work that they are going to do to understand who they are as they ask the question, am I willing to be successful and not explode by playing the game of life God's way? And that's the ultimate question that we are introducing in level 1. And we are showing them that just like the lessons must be learned to successfully play video games, similar lessons must be learned to be successful in the game of life. So final word, have fun. Final word, let your group be a no judgment zone. Allow the youth to share from a place of transparency and vulnerability. And then finally, focus on them learning the wisdom and the truths that God would have them to learn so that they are equipped to advance one stage at a time in life. If you do that, the fruit, the results will speak for themselves. So this is week 1, level 1. Don't get it twisted. Have a good day.